Today is June the 20th, 2016. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University, and today I am in Roger Mills County, the town of Cheyenne.
Correct.
To interview Jan Cloyde, and this is part of our Cowboy in Everett County project, so thank you for having me today.
I'm very pleased to have you and to have you out here.
It's a very pretty town and a pretty county so far that I've seen.
Thank you. People who are from here are very proud of it and have done a lot of work to make it that way. I don't know if you saw our park, our city park with the museums and the ball fields and the swimming pool. There's a lot here that the people who live here have worked hard on and are very proud of.
It's a good hometown feel about it.
It is. Yeah, it does.
Where were you born here?
I was born in Oklahoma City, but have lived here since I was 6 months old, 4 or 5 months old actually. And in fact, the beginning of this house in which we're sitting is the house I grew up in my whole life. And then after our parents died, I asked the 7 nieces and nephews to sit down with my brother and sister and me, and we arranged what we thought would be good to hold everybody when everybody can be here. So we added on about twice as much as the original house, and we have lots of bedrooms and bathrooms now, and a really fun kids room that I'll show you, which has 3 sets of bunk beds and all kinds of fun animals in it for kids.
Cool.
Yeah, so it's neat.
Well, do you mind telling what year you were born?
No, I was born in 1950.
And you have a brother and a sister.
Uh-huh.
Where are you in the order?
I'm the baby. We're far apart. Larry's 15 years older than I, and Barbara's 8 years older than I. So, and while I have no children, they have 4 and 3 respectively, with 16, as I call them, greats, and my life is very dedicated to spoiling them, which is a lot of fun.
Sure. Yeah. That's a lot of, well, age difference between all 3 of you. Should they spread them out?
Yes.
Intentionally, maybe to help with college?
You know, I think it was a sign of the times and how difficult it was back then, as much as anything, economically. It was really, especially early in the parents' marriage, it was a hard life. And you know, they remember, I have stories of when Larry was a baby and they would, you know, wash tea towels or rinse them in water and hang them on the windows during the Dust Bowl days to try to keep from just smothering this baby with all the dirt that was around. So pretty bleak times. You know.
Were they from here originally? Your parents?
No, had moved here the generation before.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what did they do for a living?
Well, we had a variety of things in the family. We have an extended family, so I always talk about it. Everybody ranched and farmed, and then we said they usually had another job to pay for it. And so my parents, he was the state highway department foreman for the county, and she was all my life a stay-at-home mother, you know, very active in the community and that kind of thing, but did not work outside of the home.
Room mother.
Yes.
Brought the cupcakes and cookies to school.
Yeah, she wasn't too big on that, but at least she was always here when I got home, or I knew where I was going to be. So it was a great way to grow up. But as I said, we had a very big extended family, so I had other aunts and uncles living in the town with cousins, and so we just kind of roamed from one house to another. And also growing up in a town like Cheyenne, which I know it was an unusual time in the 50s versus these days, but we knew everybody and where they lived and whose house we could go to and whose we couldn't or shouldn't, and so it was just kind of it was a really nice upbringing.
What was the main street like during your childhood?
Well, I don't know if you had a chance to take a spin down it. When I grew up, there were 4 grocery stores, 2 drug stores, 2 dry goods stores, 3 or 4 car dealerships. So it was quite the bustling place. On Saturday afternoons at 2 or 2:30, they had the drawing, which was sponsored by the merchants. I think the first prize could grow, so it might be $80 or $90, and then the second one was 25 and the third 10 or something like that. So people were in the stores at drawing time because they wanted a chance to win that money. And you know, we could just go to the stores and, you know, everybody knew us. And I remember one of my first summer jobs, the money I saved, you know, I'd had my eye on an outfit or something in one of them, and got to go in myself and proudly pick it out and pay for it. And that was a big deal. My grandma was an amazing matriarch. Unfortunately, I didn't know my grandfather because he died right before I was born. But Grandma was quite a pistol. She decided we would all go to college. I mean, it was just not a question in our family that we were going to go to college. And of her 7 children, who were spread over about 20 years in their births, and she didn't start until she and Granddad were 25. Nearly, I think 5 of the 7 did get to go to college, A&M, of course. And when Grandma would start downtown in her 49 Pontiac, she started at the top of Main Street that went by the courthouse, if you noticed it, and then on in. And people would go, "Here comes Grandma Bradshaw," you know, get out of the way, because you never knew. She drove in a unique way with a foot on the brakes and a foot on the gas. And so, you know, it was exciting. I remember once when she decided to go to Shattuck for something, and she loaded my cousin Ricky and me in the back seat, and one of her contemporaries was in the front. And I remember thinking as we went out of town, oh, they're not going to like that we did this. But she was amazing. She taught school up in the bend of the river when they were one-room schoolhouses. The oldest children who were old enough would be in class. The one who was just younger than old enough to go to school would rock the cradle, and the baby would be in the cradle. And it was just all contained. So education and reading were always very important to us.
Would she have a selection of books at
you
her
know,
house?
That's interesting, Tanya, because I don't remember that many books at her house, and I don't know if that was just a luxury they couldn't afford then. But we were always reading, or some of us were always reading, and she certainly encouraged that. So that's a good question. I'll have to quiz some of the older cousins about that a little bit.
What was the source of the books?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the town does have a library, I noticed, but it might not have.
Didn't have
those days.
When I was growing up. In fact, I remember I loved to read so much. I remember one year in early elementary school, I thought, oh, I've read all my books and school's going to be out. What am I going to do? You know, but fortunately, within the family and with, you know, we got them. I remember one of my favorite books was Trixie Belden. I don't know if you have a daughter, but she was this sleuth kid, I don't know, 9 or 11 or something. And when the new books would come out, the TG&Y at Elk City, which was the nearest bigger town, would get them. And I would save my 59 cents and go get those new Trixie Belden books. I thought they were really special. So,
what had you had to do in order to earn 59 cents?
you know, when I was young, well, I babysat before I started. I taught music. I worked as the church secretary and the secretary at my uncle's service station until Grandma found out that I was also washing windows, and she didn't think that was the proper thing for me to do. So then I was banned from working at the service station. But I was church secretary and I gave music lessons. So I guess that, and babysat.
Well, as a youngster, do you remember getting the first allowance?
I do. Well, I always got an allowance, or I got an allowance early on. I think it was 50 cents. And it's hard to believe it would be 50 cents a week. So maybe that was a month. I don't really know. But yeah, I got an allowance until I was then working and made my own money.
Well, what were holidays like?
Oh, wait, I forgot one of my important jobs.
Okay.
I worked at the Country Boy Drive-In, which, was a come get milkshakes and hamburgers and stuff, and it had a little counter with 4 seats. I went to work there, I guess before my 8th grade year, or maybe my 8th grade year, because the woman who owned it roomed with Grandma. And one day, Grandma decided I should have a job, so she told Eloise that I would be there to work on Saturday. And bless her heart, she hired me. And so I remember that first check. It was for 6 hours for one day, $3.60. I thought it was fabulous. Now, what did you ask me?
Well, you went to the bank and cashed it?
No, I think I had an account very early on.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because part of my learning money, fiscal responsibility was I got the money for my piano lessons. Then I had to write a check for them to the teacher. So I think I already had an account then. Yeah.
I was asking about holidays. What was Christmas?
Oh,
holidays.
the holidays were the best. And a lot of it was because I think of our close family. But Thanksgiving and 4th of July, we would go to the ranch. One of my uncles lived on part of the original ranch that the grandparents had when they first came to Roger Mills County, way out north in the bend of the Canadian River. And so on the 4th of July, there would be, barbecues set up, and they would make barbecue chicken, and all the women would bring salads and vegetables and desserts. But we also would have homemade ice cream and a variety of cakes. And then after it got dark, the uncles and the older kids would set off all the fireworks. And, there are 16 or 18 of us cousins, so you can imagine with, 5 to 7 uncles thrown in, all the activity that was out there for fireworks. On Thanksgiving, the men would get up, and boys, and go very early to the ranch and would hunt quail. And then the women and children would come a little bit later with food, and there would be lots of turkeys and dressing and all kinds of food, and the table would extend from the utility room through the kitchen, through the family room, just filled with food, and you'd fill your plates and sit wherever. And then later that afternoon, setting up for the really big holiday, the kids exchanged names with each other, and the adults exchanged names. So that was a big event, and when you were of a certain age, you got to assist in that process, carry the hat around. You got the hat from one of the uncles and carry it around and let people draw the names. So come Christmas, we were always at fever pitch as a child anyway, but one aunt and uncle with 3 children who were 2 years apart, starting 2 years younger than myself. So they would arrive, and so after a while I was in charge of them because everybody went downtown to the movie theater, which was the Rook Theater, center aisle, 6 seats on each side, and that, I guess the chamber or whomever sponsored a free movie, it was a Christmas movie. And then we would storm out of the theater and down the street to the bank, where we were actually allowed to parade through the bank, and Santa would be sitting there, having come in, the fire truck having met his sleigh at the airport and transporting him in, which was a big event. And we would go through, and everyone would get a bag of treats. So, that was just fever pitch already. Well, one year, my cousin James, whom we call Baby James, he's now a judge, and he's just 4 years younger than I, but then he was Baby James. He fell down in the theater when we were all storming out, and I thought, oh, James is going to be dead, and Grandma is going to be so mad at me. Fortunately, he was not dead. A neighbor picked him up, and we got our bags of treats. But then everybody would arrive at Grandma's house, and, probably the living room and the dining room were not as big as this room we're sitting in, and, the kitchen, and what everybody would bring, like good candies, homemade candies and breads and that sort of thing. And first well, the kids would be so excited because we always knew we were getting 2 presents at Grandma's house. One from Grandma and one from the kid who had drawn our name. And so it was crazy. But before we could have the presents, we had the program. I think of it all in capital letters, the program. And the program was the little bitty kids would like sing Away in a Manger. The little bit bigger kids would do maybe a reading. And then we would start on our instruments. And I always say whatever instrument one played in band depended totally on what cousin had just graduated from high school, so that instrument was on under the bed. So that's the one that we played. So we would have all of these instrumentations, and they were, I'm sure, awful, just awful. And I know people were, that's why the uncles were away in the other room drinking coffee. So after the program, then we got to exchange gifts. So it was so exciting and so fun, and playing with all the other cousins. Then we all came home, and Santa came to our house the next morning, and then we could choose one thing to take back down to Grandma's to play with everybody. So it was, you know, I think back now and I think what a magical way to grow up. And you know, it's we didn't have, I mean, we certainly weren't wealthy. We had enough to eat and everything, but to have that kind of celebration and it's such a blessing, and it just awes me now to think about it as I know more about the world. But that was my wonderful way of growing up. The holidays were great.
What about birthday celebrations?
Oh, my birthday. I thought there were 2 major events in every year, Christmas and my birthday. Okay, so for a while I had a good friend who lived here whose birthday was the same day. And it was in the summer, which made it very nice, and probably why I thought, you know, major holiday in the summer, major holiday in the winter. So we would have a birthday party together generally, and one of my aunts, who was a very good cake maker, would do like 2 round ones but set together sort of, you know, and say happy birthday Jan and Charlene or something. So, and we would invite all the little kids because you didn't not invite people, you know, and usually have it at the park. Until my sister was the lifeguard, and then we had it at the pool and the park because she could lifeguard for it. So those were big times, you know, kind of what I looked forward to probably all summer until it came along. So.
Oh, what month was it?
August.
In August.
Yeah, yeah.
In the heat of the summer.
Oh yes, totally in the heat. Yeah, but I remember, of course, that was before seatbelts and children being in restraints, and I remember it filled the back seat of my dad's car, these toys and things, and I remember standing in the floor hanging on to the front seat, but because there wasn't room in the back seat for me to sit down because of all my loot, which I thought was just wonderful. It's fun to think about.
And you were good with sharing it?
You know, I think I was pretty good with sharing it, but the thing is, there weren't any other kids who lived up here where we did. This was not in the city limits then. It was just outside. And I grew up with our having all corrals and fence, you know, pastures behind us. And so we would typically have cows when it was time to work them. And, you know, we'd have a horse sometimes. And I think we even had a pig once and some chickens once. So there weren't any other kids who lived up here. So after I was old enough then to have kids visit, or I'd visit them, yeah, I don't remember not sharing. I think I was always so happy to have someone to play with that was fine with me.
Well, did you have a bicycle that you could ride into town?
I had a bicycle and I rode to town.
So not too far to do that.
No, it wasn't too far at all. And I could go to Grandma's house if Rascal, the big dog, went with me. Like, Rascal never met a person she didn't like, but I guess Grandma thought that she looked scary or something, so you know, I could walk there with Rascal.
Well, where did you go to elementary school?
I went to elementary school at Cheyenne Elementary School, and I went to high school at Cheyenne High School, and it's before the days of middle school, or we didn't have junior high, so we were in the elementary from 1 through 8 then, and the high school 9 through 12. It predated, at least in Cheyenne, it predated pre-K and kindergarten and all that. So I went to school here, you know.
Favorite subject?
Oh, probably. I liked a lot of things. Probably reading and music. Those were probably the favorites.
Well, besides piano, did you do another instrument?
I did. In the band, I played first the clarinet and then the saxophone. And while I was most accomplished at the piano, I also played the organ, particularly if it were needed. If somebody else could play the piano at church, then I could play the organ, you know. And I sang as well. So I did all of those. And I probably throughout high school gave music lessons, voice and piano, to younger kids just starting. So
that's pretty good.
It was very good. The sad thing is becoming a workaholic and letting it go. Yeah. So.
Did you like to practice?
I did not like to practice, and unless I could get hooked on like a phrase I knew wasn't right or something, and then I would do it over and over and over. But just to take time, I had to get at least till 7th or 8th grade to understand why I needed to practice. Before that, it was you have to practice, you know. So.
Do recitals?
Did recitals, did state contests. In fact, this is interesting. The first year I went to state, we played in the student union auditorium, the little student union theater. And I thought that was so cool, you know. And I guess it was the first time I had ever played on a concert grand. And so on a concert grand, often when you put your foot on the soft pedal, it kind of shifts the keyboard. And I had not had that occur before. So that threw me a little bit at the beginning of my solo, but then I recovered and it went all right.
Was that the first time you'd been on campus?
No. In fact, I saw a cousin yesterday morning at church and said, do you remember when your mother got her master's at OSU, which she did while she was principal of the elementary school here? And he said, well, I think I was in junior high, and he's 6 years older than I. And I said, yeah, I was preschool, I'm pretty sure. And that's the first time I recall being on campus. And it was hot, you know, it was so hot. And she received her master's, so her immediate family and grandma and I went. And I think it was largely, I got to go because I should see the campus and see OSU and that kind of thing. So. And the pageantry of the faculty marching in. Yeah, I don't remember that part too much. I remember I had this cool new blue purse I got to take. And this is another thing. I remember we stopped at the service station somewhere along the way, you know, and that's when they still pumped your gas and all that kind of thing. And they always had these giveaway programs. And they gave away glasses, drinking glasses. And I remember we got a drinking glass, and I thought, because I don't think they did that in Cheyenne, I thought that was pretty cool. So, you know, it's funny the things that stick with you like that.
Were you involved with organizations or clubs during high school?
Yes, I was. You know, I think, okay, there were 21 in my graduating class. Mm-hmm. I think it must be, well, I mean, there were some kids that weren't involved in things, but I think it was probably mainly because they had chores to do, you know, they lived on the farms and they just couldn't be spared and that kind of thing. But us town kids particularly were involved. So I was involved in, you know, like we had something called Bearettes, which was the hip club because it's the Cheyenne Bears. So we had that. Junior year, we were responsible for the concession stand at the ball games, and so I was the business manager for that. Senior year, edited the annual, you know, and then played for everything, accompanied everything in the county basically, including funerals and weddings, but certainly the choirs and the ensembles and all of that. So yeah, and very active in church, and we had, you know, a youth organization that went with that. So it was a couple of counties, I think, and was an officer in that. So yeah, a lot of activity.
Yeah. Any hobbies developed at that time?
Hobbies? That's a really good question. I don't think it even occurred to me about having a hobby.
So worried.
Oh no,
Okay.
I'm totally not domestic. I have learned to cook and like to cook, but I say to my friends in LA, I cook country. You know, I cook Oklahoma food, where it's more about tasting good in mass quantities than it is looking beautiful on the plate or something. I guess reading was still my favorite thing to do.
Your pastime?
Yeah.
Your pastime?
Yeah.
That or music, I guess.
Music, yes. But you know, and you'll hear this thing throughout my life, family was always very important. So probably we spent more time, you know, just with the other parts of the family than maybe a lot of folks do. And the real reason we did this house is because I wanted us to continue to have a central family gathering place. And usually during Christmas time, sometime the cousins who live around and their spouses will get together one night or something. And so we try very hard to keep that going.
Well, as a youngster, would you play particular games like Annie Over or
yes.
hopscotch or whatever?
Outside at Grandma's, we would play Annie Over, and we would play Red Rover, and we would do hopscotch. She didn't have a huge yard. Well, hide and seek was always very important. You know, that was a big one. And then most everybody in our family is quite athletic. I being a rare and big exception to that. So there was always, you know, a game of catch going, or playing basketball, shooting hoops, and my brother played college ball, and several others of the family did too. So there was always some kind of ball game going on. The kids would like to go hunting, sometimes fishing, just a variety of things like that.
What did you call it? Lunch, dinner, supper?
Oh, no.
Supper?
Dinner and supper.
Dinner was the noon?
Yes.
And suppers?
Yeah, it was always that. I remember the first time I heard someone calling the evening meal dinner, and I thought, wow, they're waiting a long time to eat, you know, kind of thing. Then I got cued in.
What was one of the favorite things your mother fixed? Or grandmother, for that matter.
Well, Grandma did great chicken and dumplings, and she also did wonderful homemade rolls and cinnamon rolls. If you would come in Grandma's house after school and smell that great yeasty smell, you knew you were in for a good treat. It seemed like Grandma always produced mass quantities of food because, you know, like one of the families with 4 kids could drop in and somehow she fed everybody. Here, well, we ran cattle, so we always butchered our own beef, and so actually it was only after I was grown and went to the grocery store that I learned you had to actually choose meat, you know, kind of thing, because we had ours frozen in a locker, and we would just go get it when we needed meat. So that was a big lesson, expensive one for me. But I think probably our favorite was either, you know, round steak with biscuits and gravy, all of that typical country meal. It would probably be called a chicken fried steak today. Or Sundays would be roast with carrots and potatoes and all that, so it could simmer while we were at church and then be ready to put on the table when we got home. So those were probably 2 of my favorites.
So Sunday dinner was a regular thing for the whole family?
Yeah, and then that night we would just eat leftovers, or I guess bologna sandwiches. I don't know what we ate, you know, but there was, during the week, supper was the big meal, but Sunday it was dinner.
And then what would you do in the afternoon after having the big meal, typically?
Well, we also played cards some, but usually I was too young unless one of the other cousins nearer my age was around. What did we do? In the summer it would be too hot really to go out. I think I read a lot. We didn't have much TV. We had the first TV because the cable guy thought that up here on the hill would be the most effective place for it. So we had the first TV, so people would just come over to watch TV, but that was a little later. And typically Sunday night for Gunsmoke, I think. But during, I don't know, I guess I was just too self-absorbed as a kid to really know. I mean, I think Barbara, my sister, you know, Larry was gone by then effectively. Except I'll tell you one of the things when he was home. But Barb would hang out with her friends, you know, like teenagers do. Mm-hmm. We both worshipped Larry and still do. And when he would come home from college, or in the summers when he was here, he was farming for everybody to earn money and that kind of thing, and doing our farming. But if he would ever have a free Sunday, we had a small plane growing up. We had a 2-placer for a long time, and then we had a 4-placer. But this was back in the 2-placer days, so one seat in front of the other. He would load Barb and me up in the plane, and we'd go fly the river. So that was extra special, both because it was a really neat thing to do, and it was because he was taking us, you know. So it was just, I remember that vividly. You know, now I wondered if it happened more than once, or if I just loved it so much I have made it be a more occurring than it was. Who knows? But anyway, we did that. That was really cool.
Did you learn how to fly yourself?
I did not. Isn't that silly?
Would you have wanted to? Well, obviously not. Or
Well, yeah, but I think, you know, I think things that you take for granted that you come with, mm-hmm. you think there'll always be a chance to do it. Barb did, and Barb is quite a good pilot. She soloed the day she could, when she was 16, and she said, "Jan, you want to go up flying?" And I said, "Sure," because, you know, I wouldn't want to do anything the older siblings would do. And so we're up in the air, and she goes, "You're the first person I've ever taken up." And I remember thinking, I think that's a good thing, you know. But they're quite good pilots. Here's another great pioneer story. So my oldest uncle was the oldest of 4 sons, and Granddad lived through the war, but it was during the war, and of course everybody was going, and he had a trucking business, so he was not taken because his trucking business was so needed to move supplies across the country. Mm-hmm. And so his 3 younger brothers went, but they of course were Army Air Corps. I mean, they were all adventurers and were taught to fly. So he got a plane, and I think was partially self-taught and partially got somebody who was a pilot who helped teach him, and he was then a pilot. So that's why I grew up with an airplane in the family and thought it was like a normal thing, you know. Mm-hmm. So, and it was really great, especially when I was really young and the roads weren't that good, so we could get to Oklahoma City at least without it being a science project. So it was nice.
You would actually fly?
Yeah, we flew. Yeah,
from here to there.
Yeah.
And where's the airport here in town?
It's out west. If you go through town on Main Street, mm-hmm. and go up and go around a curve, then you'll see the sign for the airport. Mm-hmm. And they've done a good job of keeping it up over the years. We got a government grant, it's probably 20 years ago or so now, to expand the runway. When I was a child, this was really cool, and this was fun. It would be at night, and of course there was barely a runway. It was probably not even paved, but the 3 or 4 who had planes used it. Like a plane would buzz really low over the house, and that was a sign that somebody was coming in to land, and they couldn't get home before dark, so it's dark. So then the other pilots and others would just drive their vehicles out and shine the headlights so that the plane could see to land. So, you know, mother is the, what is it? Necessity is the mother of invention. Pretty cool, yeah. In the way they made it work.
Community
all work together, yes. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So you would have graduated high school in 1968. Vietnam was it's beginning or already in the works at that point?
In the works, yeah. one of the things that's always kind of appalled me was that I could be so relatively ignorant of what was going on in the world at that stage of my life. And when Vietnam really, I guess, impacted me was one of my good friends at college. Dad was Colonel Rob Reisner, who was a prisoner of war for a long time. And so through Rob, his son, we, of course, became very aware of it. But I hadn't been that much except for male counterparts worrying about their draft number and were they going to need to go and that sort of thing. But I was pretty ignorant of stuff. I mean, this was kind of a cocoon, provincial sort of way of growing up.
Well, and you were at OSU during that time period too. Any memories regarding that?
Most of my memories, I mean, I think we had a couple of
protests.
Yeah, protests. But we also had a racial protest at one, or some kind of problem at one stage, and I remember that very vividly. And that sort of began to open my eyes to everybody didn't have it so easy, growing up. College was an amazing time for me just to learn about all the subjects one could study and all the things there were in the world, as well as to learn about different kinds of people and different religions, and to start to try to make sense of them. And as I say, because I was reared so parochially and protected and that kind of thing, it was probably the first time I really began to examine my value system and to make conscious decisions rather than those with which I came. And that was a real interesting time. I think sometimes you go through sort of an anger stage at how could I have been so unaware, or how could I have just been made to think that, or whatever, and learning to think for myself. One of the people, and I know sometimes you talk to people about professors they remember. One of my earliest mentors, and certainly at OSU, was Dean Zelma Patchen. And I don't know if you got to know her or know her name, but she was first, when I was there, called the Dean of Women. And then they at least got rid of that name and called it the Associate Dean of Student Affairs. But she mainly had women's kinds of things report to her. Dean Patchen was just savvy and with it, and a lot of fun. And she taught me that you could look at life differently. You could do some things that I thought you'd go straight to hell for doing, and actually you didn't. And I'm not talking bad things. I'm just talking about broadening one's horizons. She was just, I guess it was the right time for me to be around a person like her. And I was fortunate that not only did was she very involved in some of my organizations, but she also was chair of one or two university-wide committees, like to search committees to hire new people. And I would be the student representative on those. So would have the opportunity to be in her home and watch her entertain and watch her to know when she spoke and when she didn't, because by now I knew she had strong feelings and that kind of thing. So it was a wonderful, she was a wonderful mentor to me. Yeah, so it was great. To the extent that when I was first, I had finally left OSU and was in Dallas working in banking, I thought, okay, I know I should join some organizations, right? And so I thought about what Dean Patchen had been involved in. And she was involved in the American Association for University Women, and she was involved in Business and Professional Women's Club. So I joined those, which were great stepping off points for a lot of other things. But I think back on that so fondly. She was just amazing.
Well, we should back up and talk about how you came to go to OSU?
Oh, okay. Well, I was always going to go to OSU because people in my family go to OSU. In fact, Frank and I were counting up, and we came up with 26 of us, in the family who have gone to OSU, starting in the generation before mine. We have, I think, from OSU, we have several PhDs in the family. I think one of them is from OSU. We have several masters. So it's an OSU family, big time. And I've thought about that, but we just have always really loved it. They loved Oklahoma A&M. I think it being a land-grant university, and I think being in a very, I think the symbiotic relationship with Stillwater is a wonderful thing that adds to the feeling of just being at home on the campus. I mean, still today, it just makes me happy to go on campus. Used to make my dad happy to go on campus. We all just feel a real love for it. And all of our experiences have been totally different. I'm kind of the, along with Frank, probably the only ones who were really active in student government. Some of the others have been really active in athletics or other things. So everybody's very different, but it was just always where we went to school. And I remember as a young child thinking, farmers send their kids to OSU, and city people send their kids to OU. I don't know where. I don't know if I made that up myself trying to figure it out or what. But we just always have been very firmly OSU.
So when you applied, you knew you were going to get in anyway?
Yeah. Fortunately, I was at the top of my class, and so that was easy to be accepted. And but yeah, I didn't. It's before all the anguish of applying to colleges. First of all, we couldn't have afforded not going anywhere else, I'm sure, except a local one. And even from grandma on down, it was like we go to the university, because back then, the regional ones were called colleges, I think, not universities.
And normal schools are around in there too.
Yeah, so we were going to go to OSU.
Well, how did you get there the first day when they took you and dropped you off?
They took me and dropped me off. Well, that was about it. I mean, we didn't have very big dorms. We didn't have a lot of clothes. So they took me and dropped me off. I don't remember much more than that. Just seeing the room and meeting my roommate and connecting with other friends I had who were going there. Some of whom lived in the same dorm, which was Willard Hall. My aunt and my mother had lived in Willard Hall, so that was pretty incredible to me. And of course, being basically lazy, the reason I wanted Willard was because it was the most conveniently located, right? So that was really cool, and they were known for having a good cafeteria, I think. So yeah, I lived in Willard for 3 years. Yeah, 3 years.
Same room each year?
The same wing. There were 2 different rooms that I was between, I think 209 and 211 or something like that, yeah. So it was great. And it was such a wonderful group that we just happened to have there in Willard. And most of them pledged. I did not. I was an independent. And but when we were tapped for mortarboard at the end of our junior year, I bet half of the group had been in that group at Willard. We had, the Panhellenic president, 2 or 3 house presidents, the RHA president. I was president of Association of Women Students. We just had all of these people who had happened to be together that freshman year, which I thought was just so cool, and really just good basic people. So it was fun.
Any incidents involving Theta Pond right there beside it?
Actually, no. I have no accidental dunkings or or falling in love or any kind of stories from Theta Pond. So.
And were you there during the streaking, when streaking was popular?
We did have, I think, a little bit of streaking, but not too much. Yeah.
Penny raids?
Yeah, there were penny raids. Although I think I remember more being on alert for them, and then they're not really occurring, than actual occurrences.
Well, would you do your own laundry?
Oh yes, we had a laundry down in the basement, so you'd carry your basket down the stairs and do your own laundry. I'm sure we tried to cram as much as we could into it because you have to pay for it, so keep your own thing of soap. And I wonder if I think back, I wonder if we ever washed our sheets. Probably a couple of times during a semester, I don't know. The thought of that now is really gross, but that would have been extra money and extra effort, and you would have had to find the time when you weren't going to like catch 15 minutes or whatever. So I don't know about that.
I bet if you were used to changing them at home fairly regularly, you probably did.
Probably did, and just don't remember it. Yeah.
Do any ironing?
Yeah, we did. Where was the iron? An ironing board. I guess it was there with the laundry, but of course, because I mean that was before polyester and other things, and we couldn't afford to dry clean things, so we must have ironed. I don't remember that too much.
Would you go to dances?
I didn't really go to dances. That's funny.
Liking music so well, I figured.
Yeah, well, no, I guess I did. Oh, and there was early on when I was there, one of the music professors had a group called Choralettes or something like that. It was just women. We sang 3-part music, a lot of sort of jazz, up-tempo things. We did to audition for it. I enjoyed that. I planned and directed our spring sing entry at least one year, maybe more than one, I don't know. We did hair, which was, considered a little out there, but we thought that was pretty fun.
We meaning who, since you weren't in the sorority?
The rest of the dorm people who participated, yeah. I wonder about what, I was pretty active and stuff going on, so I think that's what took a lot of my time. Because I remember, I don't know if Mortarboard still has the calendars, but, well, probably not now that we keep everything on the phone, on a calendar, but I used to have it, and it would always be filled in, and so I was doing something, who knows what all it was.
Does it spend much time in the library?
Not too much. Sometime. It would sort of, I guess I wasn't a dedicated library person because it was mainly if somebody I was dating spent time in the library, but I did. Yeah, I studied there. But I don't remember lots and lots of time. I think I was actually a little inhibited by it. I think I had not been around. I mean, I'd studied, it's not the Dewey Decimal System. What's the
Library of Congress?
Oh no, the system that you cataloged the books back in the old days. Anyway, whatever, I'd kind of studied it and knew that there was that way that books were found, but I think I was still a little intimidated by everything about it, and of course we had to be so quiet, and of course you couldn't have anything to eat or drink then, and certainly there were not computers, and so it was a different time.
Spent more time in the student union.
Yes, more time in the student union. A group of us who were involved in student government, and particularly the OOHRP, the person I mentioned whose dad had been in Vietnam and his girlfriend were good friends of mine, and a couple of other people with them were all writers on the OOHRP, and so we had a group of us that spent a lot of time together. I'm sure hashing over every event that occurred on campus and the importance of it and that kind of thing. Probably making mountains out of many molehills.
Was the hideaway pizza there?
Oh yes, that was special. That was very, very special. To, like on Sunday night when you ate someplace other than the dorm, to go in with somebody and be able to order a small pizza and share it or something, and that was big. That was really big. It was the original location too, so around the corner from where it is now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where it was before. Well, how often would you come back home during the semester?
Not often. Probably for 3 reasons. One, we were told we were going to college and we weren't coming home every weekend. I mean, that was just not why you went to college, right? 2, I didn't have a car, of course, and so I would catch a ride when I was going to come. And 3, it just, it was such a long distance. You know, it was like 3.5 hours on a good day, kind of, and that was a long time out of a Friday and a Sunday. So not a lot, except for the holidays.
Well, we should back up too and say, what was your major?
Oh, my major was sociology. Don't ask. I loved it. I loved that major. I think I had gone crazy when I first got to school. I started out in speech path. And I learned there were all these majors, and I was so excited because at Cheyenne High School then, you didn't really have choices. I mean, girls weren't allowed to take FFA. I wouldn't take home ec, you know, and so there weren't just a lot. I wouldn't take shorthand and stuff, so there weren't a lot of choices. So I get to campus and learn about all of these fascinating things. So I think I changed majors about twice a semester the first couple of years. I was in math, I was in music, I was in English, I was in who knows what else. Oh, family relations and child development. They don't call it that now, but that's what they called it. So I was in a variety of things, and by then I had gotten pretty active on campus, and the sociology professors were pretty good about, you know, giving you a little extra time off or fudging with you if you were busy involved in some of those activities. And I thought, well, now that makes a lot of sense. Plus, I was fascinated by it. I thought it was interesting learning about different peoples and how they interacted and all that. So I thought, oh, it would make sense for me to major in sociology. And besides, I was going to get a master's, so hey. So I majored in sociology, and then was trying to discern whether I should get an MSW, a Master's in Social Work, or, and this was again because of Dean Patchen, be a Director of Student Activities. And so I sort of was opting for being the Director of Student Activities. I graduated a semester early in December, so I was hired to go be Assistant Head Resident in Stout Hall, and while I could take a couple courses and think about where I was going to go to graduate school. And then they created a job for me at OSU at the Student Union. Winston Schindel was the director there, who grew up in, I call it, a suburb of Cheyenne, Oklahoma, a little town named Durham up northwest of here that's, you know, a wide spot in the road with a couple of churches and a community building and a store, sort of like a quick stop store. So Winston was director of the Student Union, and he created this job, if I would stay there to do my master's, called Programs and Promotions Assistant. And I would be the advisor to Student Union Activities Board and do like the films and all the programs there in the art shows and the Student Union. Was a fabulous, wonderful job. $450 a month, I remember. You know, thought, okay, we'll live on this. And so I stayed at OSU and got my master's there.
And what?
Student Personnel and Guidance for Higher Education, yes. Mm-hmm.
Wow. But then you got into banking. You'll have to explain how that, that came about.
Now, I think all these things are so funny. They now have, let's see, I think it's called Camp Cowboy, the big things for incoming freshmen. Well, I had planned the first ever freshman week. It was going to be like, not week, a couple of days before school started. And freshmen were going to be showing up, so 4,000 or 5,000, however many ever. And I had planned that, you know, with other people on campus, but that was my primary responsibility. So I couldn't go to Dallas until, and Dallas was the first choice, until the middle of September. And one of the reasons I wanted to go to Dallas was because that's when community colleges were brand new. I'd done a paper on it during my master's, and I thought it was a fascinating concept, and I wanted to be one of the first in it. But by the time I was able to move, the schools had hired their staffs. So I took a couple of days off and then decided that business would be the thing for me to do. Like, business was this theoretical concept. I mean, I didn't know anything. I didn't know a debit from a credit. I had no business acumen or knowledge. And so I chose 4 businesses that stood out to me in downtown Dallas. And I took the student off of my student personnel and guidance master's, emphasized I'd been on some state status of women committees and on a statewide search that we had done there on campus, and so Dr. Calm was very supportive. Anyway, so I kind of rearranged my resume and went in and had this spiel that it was 1974. Companies were going to have to hire women in executive roles. They had never done that before, so A, the company would not know how to assimilate women, and B, the women were going to have no role models. So I was going to design this program to make it all work. A couple of companies were actually interested in that. I look back and think how naive, but anyway, so you can brazen your way through a lot. I went to the biggest bank, which was Republic Bank of Dallas, and the assistant director of personnel with whom I interviewed said, "I don't think we have a job like this." So I said, "That's fine, I understand." And I left. But the head of personnel was calling when I got home and said, "We do have a training program that we think you'd be great for. Will you interview for it?" So I said, "Of course, you know." So I went and spent the whole day interviewing with, I thought, really old white men, okay? They're probably in their 40s. Now they would be very young to me. But you get the picture, I thought, oh my. And kept interviewing at the other places. Fortunately, the bank made me a very nice offer to be in this training program. There was a lot going on underneath, but the bottom line was I would be the first woman hired in the training program. And I was hired on the last day of the quarter, meeting a requirement for them, but would actually have people come up to me while I was in the training program and say, "I didn't think we hired women in this program." And I'd say, "Well, take a good look, because you got one now." I have other more hair-curling stories that I won't commit to film, but I ended up loving it. And typically, the training program was rotation through all the areas of the bank, and in some you would have a longer tenure and so do a project, and others you would just be there a week or two and learn what goes on there. And so it was an 18-month roughly program. After about 6 or 8 months, I just wanted to run something. I just, and so one of my friends who had also been in the training program several years before was running a department, or some departments, one of which had not worked at all. I mean, it just was the bane of everybody's existence. So he said, "Did I want to run it?" And I said, "Sure." And he went to our boss, who I thought was just so senior then. He was the senior vice president, and said that he wanted to put me into it. And John said he just wasn't sure a woman could take that pressure. And so Bill, who wanted to hire me, said, "Well, just think of her as a soft man." And so however it worked, I've always believed get your foot in the door, however. And so I took over that department, and we cleaned it up, and it was a wonderful success. And so the longer I was there, I would ask for something else to do because I wanted to learn and do more. And I would be given something additional, but not something totally different. Until it occurred to me that they really didn't think this little girl from Oklahoma was probably ever going to leave. Mm-hmm. And the two large banks in Dallas had an agreement that they didn't hire away from each other. The other bank wanted me to resign, then they'd hire me. And I said, if you don't have what it takes to hire me outright, you know. So I love the arts, and I thought I needed to go to a big city that was a banking center. In those days, New York and Chicago were. So I was interviewing there, and fortunately had been on some U.S.-wide committees about these areas that I ran, and was probably the only woman, or maybe there was another who did. So it was easy to stand out in the crowd. So people were amenable to talking to me about coming. But while I was talking to them, a headhunter came to me on behalf of Crocker Bank in San Francisco. And so I ended up taking a job there, to which my folks said, well, at least it's not New York. So, hey, everything has a bright side. So I went to San Francisco. It was a big change because where I had a couple of ethnic groups in Dallas, there were 14 in my first cadre of employees in San Francisco. And of course, things were just very different there. Plus, Dallas at that time was a unit banking state, meaning everything was pretty contained in a downtown location. And California was branch banking, so you had locations all over the place. So those were big differences, but I loved it. And after about a year and a half, I was selected to do the research about and then possibly start another department in consulting about some new products banks had. And fortunately, that went very well for me. And then, you know, I got some additional responsibility. And about that time, a good friend had gone to First Interstate, and he knew me because I was, again, in these banking circles. And he wanted me to join First Interstate to do some turnarounds of some of the departments. So we talked, and it seemed like a great deal to do. I tried to talk them into letting me stay in San Francisco because, you know, it's San Francisco. But the headquarters was Los Angeles, and so they insisted I move there, which ended up being one of the most pleasant surprises of my life. I said, having lived in Dallas and San Francisco, I always just said, well, I'll never live in Houston or Los Angeles. And living in Los Angeles has been just a real pleasure. It's San Francisco can tend to be sort of provincial, and LA, everybody came from somewhere else. So it's very easy to assimilate. First Interstate was a great company for me. I was allowed to start up a bunch of things, to run a lot of departments, to be the first, which I really like to do. It's and probably one of the most crowning things there was I was on the managing committee of the bank and selected to put the first department together that went across all of First Interstate lines. First Interstate had been grandfathered when interstate banking laws went into place originally. So most banks could not have locations in other states. But First Interstate had been grandfathered with 13 states. And so we had kind of operated independent banks and then sort of regional. But then we were starting to really centralize. And this was a few years before interstate banking happened throughout the country. So I did the first department and took it, put it together, which was fun and rewarding, and I had great staff, offices all over the country. Did not travel part or all of 2 weeks those last 2 years, but it was so fun, and I had such a strong team, and it was just a great experience.
When did you sleep?
I didn't sleep much. Which I now tell people you must do. I'm a real proponent of don't be unhealthy like I was. I don't think it's smart, but that's what I did.
What did you do to de-stress? I mean, you had to have a little bit of stress, dear now.
Yeah, no, there was a lot of stress. Well, when I first started traveling, my client base was always like the Fortune 1000. When I first started traveling back at the other bank so much of the time, I I love the arts, so I first would make it a point to go to museums every place. And I like zoos, so then I had the list of the top 20 zoos in the U.S., and so I'd go to the zoos. In New York, particularly, and in Chicago, I would always see a lot of theater. So I guess I did those things. But I will tell you, I got back from a sales trip. This was when I was still in San Francisco. And I think because there is no immediate gratification in that kind of job, you're calling and you're hoping they will take what you want, but sometimes they need to get to know you and that kind of thing. And I caught myself on Friday afternoon, probably waiting for the plane home, putting together a dinner party. And I would make homemade bread and homemade meringue pies and, all this kind of thing, and get like 6 or 8 together for a dinner party at my house on Saturday night. And it became clear to me I was doing this for immediate gratification, unlike I got on the road all week. So, but I always had a large group of friends too, and, and like I say, I always loved to read. During that time, I didn't read many books, and I usually do read, have read books, and now again do. And of course, it was in those workaholic days that I didn't practice the piano, and so that kind of went by the wayside. But mainly I worked. 10 or 12-hour days, sometimes more, and you come home and eat and take care of the basics, or you're on the road. My schedule typically on the road would be a client breakfast and then meetings all the way through, and sometimes entertaining in the evening. Sometimes even flying after that. I said it is not a good thing to check in and out of a hotel with the same clerk at the desk. So I was pretty crazy during those times, but I loved it. Then in 96, First Interstate was bought in a hostel by Wells Fargo. I had breast cancer and extensive treatment a few years earlier, and still traveled the whole time. 6 months of chemo, 2 months of radiation. And so I thought I should take a little time off. So I took 6 months off, and we spent it with family. And then my boss, who was the CEO at First Interstate, took a job at the largest savings and loan to sort of make it into a bank, and said he needed me to come. And so I did, and brought all my people. This was the nice thing about staying in LA, is I was able to reemploy all my staff. And then we sold that because the technology investment was going to be so huge that we decided not to do it. So we sold it, and I took all these people and went to what was then a mid-sized bank in Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, City National Bank, and we completely rebuilt the infrastructure of it and changed things. And I through my career, have prided myself, in addition to being like first in a job and doing turnarounds, as to really growing people. That's what I love, managing people. So took this whole cadre again, but told my direct reports that we were going to switch around what they were responsible for, so they would be prepared to do my job or another similar job at their next time. And then retired from there in 2006, which my boss called a sabbatical until 2007, and then finally was really gone from there. And then in 2008, in a weak moment with my former boss and some other people, we decided to, in a weak moment for me, we decided to start a bank. So now this was my first experience at starting a bank. I had started lots of departments, but not a bank. And I hadn't worked in a small bank. So, and this was obviously going to be small because we were starting it. During that 2008, 2009 terrible economic time, we went to Wall Street, the four of us, and raised $400 million to start it, which was amazing. And we started it, got it off the ground. It's running really well, and I was again working like crazy. And so when, like, probably 2011, said now I was really retiring and did. So that's just a brief history of my career.
A lot of firsts.
Yes,
And a lot of
that's what I loved.
A lot of leadership experience. And you really can't, well, some of it you might be able to relate back to your sociology classes.
Oh, a lot of it. I really maintained that I was better prepared than a lot of business majors because of I mean, some of it you come with and some of it you pick up in class, but being able to understand why people do things the way they do sometimes and that sort of thing. I think it was incredibly beneficial.
And I think some of the negotiation
Yes.
too might be.
Yes. So I was always grateful for it. I thought it was prepared me very well.
Well, quite a contrast from here to there.
It's a big contrast. Yeah. Probably, well, you know, when I was walking around the streets of New York calling on clients and living in San Francisco and Los Angeles, big contrast. But particularly when I was at the bank that was headquartered in Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills can be a very materialistic service kind of place. And I was always so grateful for this grounding and that, you know, I could come back here and see people I've known forever and who have known me forever and just, you know, play with the kids and plan trips with them and do wonderful things like that. So I've always been very grateful. I'm grateful for a wonderful career that I loved every minute of, but I'm also grateful that I have the strong family and the strong roots that I do.
Did you get married along the way?
I was married for 7 years, actually from before the second degree at OSU through part of the time in Dallas. But we were divorced and I haven't married since then.
You've been busy.
Yeah.
That's quite, I mean, coming from Cheyenne and to, I don't know, when you would come back home, they didn't perceive you as having gotten too big for your britches.
I guess
that
not.
That phrase that people use.
I guess not. And I was always so happy to be here and to see people and everything. And
humble.
Yeah, I guess.
That's the word that comes to mind.
I don't think of myself as particularly humble, but I was just always glad to be here.
Do you own a place in LA
Yes.
now?
Yeah, I do.
And you miss it when you're here?
I was here for 6.5 weeks just a few weeks ago. I had like 3 different sets of meetings at OSU, and my niece, who keeps our 18-year-old grandnephew, had his hip replacement. So I was pinch hitting to help out during that time, which was wonderful, wonderful. And I said I have never, in my 12 or 14-hour days, I had never been as tired as keeping a child that age from 7:30 in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon. It was so wonderful and so fun. Well, what was it that you asked me? I'm off a train of thought about the coming back.
Did you miss when you're here?
Oh, when I miss. Okay, here's what I miss. Well, I miss my friends. I'm very involved with UCLA women's basketball. I mentor the coach. I'm very involved with my church, and we have a big building project going on. And I have other things with which I'm involved. So it's hard to do some of those long distance. I'm mentoring one of the basketball players and some other things. So it's hard to do those long distance, and I miss them. And I miss just my favorite haunts to go eat and, shop and that kind of thing. I mean, you cannot just run downtown or even to the next town and find anything you need here. And I think one of my favorite things, particularly if there's some ball game on that I want to see, is being able to order in really good food. There's this company called Gourmet Courier, and they deliver from some of the best restaurants in LA and Beverly Hills, and so I can order food in if I don't want to go out, or I can drive 15 minutes and be in fabulous places. And in LA, you're 20 minutes from the ocean and 30 minutes from the mountains, and So it's just an extraordinary place to live. The theater's great, the symphony's great, the museums are great, the athletics are great, and particularly if you're a UCLA fan, as I am. So, I mean, there are more things to attend that are broadening and enlightening than you can possibly do. And I have really good friends there. My book club came to Cheyenne a couple of years after we had completed adding on to the house, and that was really fun. So these were all city slickers, and you know, we did things like driving the tractor and went to the museums downtown, the one-room schoolhouse, and all of that kind of thing. And they thoroughly loved it and loved the hospitality. But I miss them. You know, we have a book club, and I miss that when I'm here. So it's I look at it as how very fortunate to have two homes that I really love to be in, and to miss the one when I'm at the other. It's just a real blessing to be able to say that.
And long term,
I don't know.
You don't want to have to pick.
No, I can't imagine being elderly and probably not being closer to some family. However, I also can't imagine a time when I won't want to have all of the things available to me that I have in LA. So it'll be interesting to see. I just don't try to plan it. Yeah.
So you're a breast cancer survivor?
Twice. Yes. In 1992, which I was pretty young, and you know, the treatments were still pretty archaic then. And that's when I worked full time too, just crazy. 2 surgeries, 6 months of chemo, and 2 of radiation. And then again, this is 16, 4 years ago, 20 years to the day almost, that I had first had it. I had another breast cancer, which was a different cancer. And so fortunately had to, you know, do mastectomy and reconstruction and all that. But fortunately did not have to do chemo except for the ongoing drug that one takes, and so was very fortunate in that.
And those happened out of Oklahoma? No?
Yes. Oh yeah, very much. I was at UCLA, and no, both in
California.
Yeah. So just the very best care, wonderful care. One of the organizations that I'm active in is at UCLA, and we have a women's health center there, and we started an executive women's advisory group about 10 or 12 years ago, where we all commit to so much a year, and it goes to research, and then we invite proposals from all over the university, not just the med school, and then we grant 4 or 5 grants, but you're like seed grants, so that enough research can be done to then go to NIH and get really big ones. And one of the reasons I was so interested in doing that is because I was horrified, not quite as much now as I was then, because it's getting a little better, but there was precious little research done on women's health. It was always just men's research studies and then applied to women, and usually that is incorrect because the bodies don't operate the same way. So we were particularly focused on studies about women's health, and then I wanted study across the silos of medicine, because one of my chemotherapies, which was the strongest I could do, so I would have done it again, but it is harmful to one's heart. We have a family history of heart stuff, so I just think there needs to be more cross fertilization between the study, between the parts of medicine, and so we help contribute to that, and that's very gratifying. We've done some really good work there, and along the way I've helped mentor the woman who runs it, who is brilliant, grew up in Kansas, and heads the Women's Health Center, is also my physician and is on national committees on different health things, and that didn't know a lot about the business side, and so been able to help on that a lot of the time. So it's just it's been very gratifying.
And then you mentor a coach?
The women's head basketball coach at UCLA.
How did that come about?
Well, this is very interesting. her name is Corey Close, and she is extraordinary. And when I heard she was coming, we had a coach that everybody was not crazy about, but thought a lot of, who was very charismatic. And she suddenly got an offer to go back to the Southeast Conference, which was home. Made sense. But a lot of people were very put out with her because she was just beginning to build a program. And Corey was hired, and I hadn't met her yet, but I heard that she was an acolyte of John Wooden, whom I just think he is amazing, was amazing. And she also was coming back. She had done her graduate work at UCLA. But I was very concerned that people would take out on Corey their anger at her predecessor. So, I met her very early on, had a reception at my house so that others could meet her and learn who she was, and I knew they'd fall in love with her. So we became good friends from the very beginning. And a year or so into her tenure, and I would meet with her occasionally. I was meeting with her and I said, Corey, I and my little old lady friends are retired and had pretty amazing careers. One was general counsel of Teledyne. Just really cool backgrounds. And I said, if there's any way we can mentor the girls or help in some way, then we're glad to. And she looked at me and said, will you mentor me? And I said, are you serious? And she goes, yeah, I'm really serious, because, how to operate in a large organization, juggling the managing of staff, which is never large enough in an environment like that, and team and all that. And so I told her it would, of course, be my distinct pleasure. And so have done that. And it is so rewarding and so much fun. And I love these kids and want to see them, do as well as they can. And the goal of the program is to build strong, confident women for the world after basketball and after college and that kind of thing. So it's exactly what I support, and we have a good time. I travel a lot with the team. In fact, they're going for their every 4 years international trip to Australia in August, and I'll be going with them on that, which should be a lot of fun. Usually we do one, but we emphasize giving back a lot, and since that's a personal thing of mine, it's a really good fit. But they've done a number of these going into underprivileged schools, and the players and coaches actually sit across from the children one by one and wash their feet and put new socks and shoes on everyone. You can imagine the science project the director of operations has in getting every shoe size before they get there. But I think we'll do some kind of project like that, maybe in an Aboriginal community while we're there, and that will be very, very special. Yeah, so it's just a great thing to be able to do.
Well, how did you get interested in basketball, though?
Okay, this is a basketball family that I'm a part of. I'm just the exception to being a klutz and uncoordinated. So, as I said, my brother played college ball. Barbara played for a couple of years at OSU. It was before Title IX, so they didn't have the good, I guess, series or in-depth programs that they do now. But she played there. My nieces and nephews, Michael, and he was a coach too. And then the grandnieces, they've all played, and we have others in the family. So when I quit traveling so much, so now 10 or 15 years ago, I think I had been back here. One of the cousins' daughter had played college ball, and so I had traveled here and there to see her play. And I thought, well, isn't it silly that I don't go to any college basketball games? And absolutely, because I'm like 2 miles from UCLA. And so I began going. Some friends and I bought season tickets, and this is a funny story. So the first game I go to, I see people I know, but one of them is this guy named Don Morrison, who was at that time the UCLA rep to NCAA sports. He was also, a professor emeritus in the business school and all this. But he also was on a committee of mine at church. So we had this overlap. So Dawn sees me, and as I said, oh, fresh meat for the women's basketball program, So he immediately got me hooked up with the coach, and it sort of went from there. It's kind of grown, and particularly with Corey, it's really grown. So now I certainly follow. A couple of years ago, Barbara and I went to the women's Final Four, even though we weren't in it, but it was in New Orleans. It was just a fun thing to do, and something that we could do together, So yeah, we follow it. This year, well, we had a great year for UCLA basketball. As soon as it was over, I was involved in college baseball because Barbara's grandson was a pitcher, a left-hand pitcher at the University of Louisville, and he just, he was named the pitcher of the year for the ACC, and he was just drafted by the Atlanta Braves, and is now at training camp. So
Road trip.
We've been following, big road trips. I was on road trips to see him play in both Boston and Wake Forest after basketball ended at the end of March, 1st of April. So now we'll be following him in that career, and with hopes that he will move up and enjoy it. But that's been his goal since he was like 7 or 8 years old. So what an amazing and wonderful thing.
Maybe you'll end up with Dodgers, is that right?
Yeah, the Dodgers. Well, some of my friends, the same book club group, were very disturbed that the Dodgers did not recruit him, but I think the Braves had their eye on him. So, yeah.
At least that's an easy airport to fly in and out.
It is. Yeah, it is. But he won't be in Atlanta for a while, because they have all these farm teams, and I'm just learning the nomenclature, so see me in a year and I'll be able to really regale you with all that kind of stuff.
We'll follow the OSU.
Yeah, I know. We're so excited that they're in the World Series. In fact, we were talking about what time is the game tonight, because we'll all be watching that. The whole house is OSU during the football games, and we have our OSU platters of food out and all that. So yeah, we're very big on all the sports and the basketball. I'm very hopeful and excited about the new men's basketball coach. I just have really high hopes for that, and hope that the women's continue to do so well, and that this year finally I will be in Stillwater during a women's game. Corey keeps trying to schedule something in Oklahoma, but we haven't been able to do it yet. So that'll be fun if we ever can.
Sure.
Let me think. When I was maybe 4 years ago, when I was first working with her, UCLA women came to OU for a game. So of course I said, my grandniece, who was then still in high school, the coach, the family, everybody had to come, had UCLA attire for everyone. And we go to the game, and people are being so nice to us. And we kept going, my brother and my nephew and I kept saying, why are people being so nice? Because we weren't accustomed to that. Mm-hmm. And then it dawned on us because we were wearing blue and not orange. So that was a pretty funny story, but whatever. It's a lot of fun, and we love it. We just love it. Yeah.
Well, with your connection to UCLA, you still have connections with OSU. Mm-hmm. You're on the, I had it written down, you're on the board of what?
Board of Trustees of the foundation.
Stay busy with that.
Yes. And that's, I think, a really important thing.
And then Women for OSU Council?
Women for OSU. And I don't know if you know about Women for OSU. Often I'm not big on organizations for women because I think it should just be for whomever. Early on in my business career, I thought that really sat women back to be segregated, so I would not allow women who worked for me to do that. But Women for OSU is like Women in Philanthropy at UCLA, which I'm also involved in. And the whole goal is to raise money for scholarships for students. And I'm for anything that is going to give students a better chance or allow students who might not otherwise be able to to go to school. That's what Women for OSU does. But the most exciting part to me is I always want to touch the students. I mean, I want to have opportunity to spend time with students. And we are starting a class on philanthropy for students. I mean, it's going to be a class. And Vice Provost Pam Fry. Is it Vice Provost? I get the university titles mixed up. Or Vice Chancellor. I think. Yeah, anyway. Sorry, Pam. She and I have been working on this, and it's become a committee of the Women for OSU. And we'll start a class, we think, next spring semester that's, philanthropy and how to do it and what it is. And then that will give students the summer to work on a project. And I was telling the trustees the other day, that'll be a great chance for us to mentor students. The Women for OSU members are very anxious to be able to mentor students and hopefully help know what doors to open or where you can get something. And so I'm really excited about that, both because I think it's so worthwhile. I wish I had known more about philanthropy when I got out of school and started working with organizations. So I think that will be useful, and I think it will also be just another way for students to be involved and to meet alums who could probably help them along the way at some point. So we're just really jazzed about that. That's going to be cool.
You'll be making a few trips back for that.
I will. In fact, I said, Pam and I have laughed that the instructors will be cheap, so it won't take much to put it on. But yeah, it will involve, we'll work out when I need to be here and that kind of thing. But I think it's going to be so fun, and I think we're going to have a lot of help doing it. So we're excited about that. And then I'm also involved with President's Fellows, which we felt was a very necessary thing so that Burns could have some, a pool of money for needs he sees that don't otherwise get funded, whether it's a student who might be about to drop out of school or just something that's very needed on campus. And so I'm really happy to support him because I think he and Ann have been so fabulous for OSU.
They can't retire.
I know. That's what I keep saying.
They cannot. I mean, they've been great.
They are just fabulous.
Yeah. Going on 10 years. Well, I think he started in 2008 or 7, somewhere in there.
Did he? Time goes so fast, I lose track.
Pushing 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, your loyalty is still to the Big Orange.
It is, very much.
And a lot of people's are. Do you have any idea why? What is it about OSU that creates that strong connection?
Well, I think it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. It is such a feeling of home. It's a feeling of this is a good place, and it's a place that will help me learn and grow. And I think a lot of people like myself have had a good experience there, and so we want to help other kids have good experiences, especially with all the challenges we have in the world today. I think the more we can know about each other, religions and ethnicities and value systems, I just think it has to be helpful. And particularly when Oklahoma goes through a time like now, when it's negatively impacted by the energy industry, I think it's just really good to have strong supporters that know this is something that should go on and can go on, and we want it to go on not only for people in our own families, but for other people in Oklahoma and other places who decide to come here. It's kind of like just this island or this mecca of good.
Well, the campus is very pretty. Do you have a favorite spot?
Oh, favorite spot. Well, it's hard to beat the formal gardens, just to be able to see the formal gardens. But I guess the Student Union will always be my favorite spot. Even though it's so changed and so different, it's still an amazing place.
Not Willard Hall?
Well, no, not since it's the education, department headquarters now. It sort of it isn't as conducive as running in and flopping down on a sofa or something. So
Parlors.
yeah,
Probably similar to what it was.
yeah, it is
Pretty
actually.
similar.
Yeah, it is actually pretty similar.
Well, the student union would have had the bowling alley in it when you were there.
It did.
I wish they'd bring that back. I think students would enjoy.
I think
But
that was a
having
really
back.
neat thing. I guess they felt they needed that space for other. Yeah,
It's still a pretty spot.
it's
And
a
the
great
library's
spot.
a pretty spot too.
The library is. Sorry, I didn't choose that. But yeah, it is.
The overall is pretty. When the boot that they've done, the temporary boot and the hat,
Mhm.
really nice.
Yeah.
Okay, what's next?
I
What
think
do
the
next?
grounds crew is amazing.
I think the Hargises had something to do with that
They
too.
did.
I think
They did. And, you know, I'm so excited about the new performing arts building. That's going to be extraordinary. We got the brochure at the meeting last week about it, and it just looks fabulous.
Another reason to come back.
Yeah,
Or-
and to bring world-renowned symphonies and Broadway plays to Stillwater is just something very special. I certainly remember going to New York the first time for my first Broadway play, and it'll be nice to expose more people to that kind of thing.
So have you seen Hamilton?
No, and I'm dying to see it. I think I'm probably going to end up just anteing up because I want to see it. I was actually, there is a certain point about Weatherford when one is driving west from Oklahoma City or Stillwater, where you can no longer get OSU's public radio station. It's beyond the reach. And so I was listening to Hamilton after that, coming out Friday night after the meeting, and thinking, you know, this is such exciting music. Plus, it's a great history lesson too. So actually, our book club has decided, despite the length, that we will read Hamilton, but we're gonna talk about it like in March or sometime in first quarter, so that we can continue our other books and, you know, read a few chapters along and be ready for it.
That's on my list too. I haven't read it yet
Yeah.
either.
It just, I love to hold books, and I seldom will read them on my iPad, but that one I'm going to put on electronically because I think carrying it about will be just a little too much. You know?
I love a book. You can't beat it.
Yeah, I know. I love having a book.
Well, do you have a favorite childhood memory? And then we'll wrap it up.
Favorite childhood memory?
Oklahoma.
Well, you know, I've spoken in general about our holidays and how special those were. You know, I guess one, and I grew out of it too early, but I've always thought back on it and loved it, is just going to feed the cattle, you know, after school, and just being out in the country and having the, you know, they would see the pickup and know food was coming and follow along behind it, and learning a little bit about the cycle of life and where we got our food and things that I think too many children today don't have a clue about. So yeah, I guess it would be a generalized memory of just going and doing those things. It's really not any of the performances I did or things like that. Was being with family and being in the country.
Well, where do you consider home?
LA.
What do you consider
Yeah,
LA home?
although I always say when I'm coming here I'm going home, or when I'm talking to Larry on the phone, I'll be home on this day, you know. So it's a close
Home bee.
yeah, really. But LA, probably because I have lived there so long.
From
84.
Oh, from 84.
Yeah.
Oh.
And before that was San Francisco for 4 years. So I've been in California a long time.
Yeah.
37 years.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
Well, I'm glad you came back and met with me today.
Thank you. It was just a pleasure to do it.
Fascinating stories. A good role model.
Thank you.
You rub off some leadership skills here.
I love everything about leadership, and And you know, we didn't even have time really to talk about the kids, but I'm going to tell you about this one program I have
Sure.
that started when there were only about 4 or 5 grades, as I call them, the nieces and nephews. And it started with Frank and Linda's kids because they're the oldest of that generation. I promised them that when they graduated from the 8th grade, we would go on a trip in the U.S. and when they graduate from high school, a trip in the world. And we have such fun because there is the whole planning and anticipating and where do I want to go, and then I get them to myself, you know, for the trip, which is extraordinary. So one of the things we've done with some of the art here in the house is bring art from the different countries. And of course there's a lot of European stuff because we go there a lot, but like those are Australian pictures, and there's some Australian baskets and things. So it's really fun to make this house about our experiences together too, which is really neat.
Makes home for them.
It does.
Really.
Yeah. So I just want to mention that.
No.
Yeah.
They get to choose where
Yes.
where you take them.
I can veto third world countries or other places, but yes, they may choose.
And they stay a week or 2 weeks?
A week in the 8th grade and 2 weeks in high school. Yeah.
Any coming up?
Let's see, next year I have 1/8. And then the following year I think I have both an 8th and a high school. And the following year 2 high school. So, yeah, but nobody has definitively said yet. You know, you have to, it's like any new thing. You have to take it out, talk about it, think about it, bounce it off, you know, and then decide if that's really what you want to do.
Is one of the requirements that it's just you and them? So the two that, if you had 2 in 1 year, they wouldn't necessarily have to go together?
Well, they don't have to go together, although one of Barbara's grandson and Larry's granddaughters graduated from the 8th grade at the same time 2 years ago, and I told them they could have 2 weeks if they went together, and they had a ball, so now they're talking about doing the senior year together, which would really be fun. So
They get 4 weeks. Then.
yeah, they got, well, I don't know if I'm going to do 4 weeks. I probably would die at that, but we'll consider other options. So, but yeah, they get to choose, and we just see.
Are they headed toward OSU too when they graduate? Possibly.
Barbara's grandchildren, probably more Kentucky since that's where they live. Well, in fact, she has 2 and a son and a grandson-in-law. All 3 of them are UK grads, and Andrew will now be University of Louisville. I think the others will probably go to Kentucky too. Her sons went to University of Kentucky, but then the younger one did his PhD, and his wife graduated from OSU. So some enter that way. We have one grandniece who, well, I have a grandniece who's there now, lives in Stout, rooms with Pam Fry's daughter, so it's kind of fun. But her younger sister thinks she might want to go someplace further, so it's going to be interesting to see. So I of course say, well, there is UCLA, no, but I think it's like further and not where I have family members, but we'll see when it gets the real time.
Well, UCLA is a nice campus too.
Oh, it's a great campus. It's wonderful.
Kind of hard to get into, isn't it?
It's not hard to get into if you know LA, you know. Oh, hard to get, or yeah, accepted.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Yeah.
It has more applicants than any other university.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it does.
But she's got connections.
Yeah, I don't think these connections would probably do much there, but
Well, maybe.
but they are interested in diversity. So people from little towns who have activities, and that's, you know, good grades, and it's a useful thing.
So coming from Cheyenne's been a good thing.
Very good thing.
Graduating from OSU's been a good thing.
Yes.
And living in UCLA, in LA,
Yeah.
that's too. So
Yeah.
pretty good life. Sounds
It's a
like.
very good life. I'm totally blessed. happy to be healthy and be here.
And it started in this little town of 830, I think is what they said.
Yeah, but it was 1,000 when I was a kid.
Okay.
Yeah. That's exactly where it started. On this hill in the other part of the house where we grew up.
I appreciate you welcoming me into your home today. Thank you.
Well, I was happy to.
Thank you.
Seemed to make the most sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.